The all is made of vibrating energy.
We are vibrating energy also. We are amazed by our ability to change our vibration, which changes what we attract. We are so grateful for this power. We let go of the need to demand the outcome and trust it is how it should be. This is a lesson on the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, the Kabbalion. So the Hermetic teaching is not only that everything is in constant motion and vibrating, but that the differences between the various manifestations of the universal power are due entirely to the varying rate mode of vibration. I mean, I find that just that one sentence completely mind-blowing. So it's basically, not only is it saying that everything has a frequency and vibration, but that what is manifested truly is the reflection of that vibration. And then it goes on to say, not only this, but even the all, which remember is everything and everything that's not, and infinite and beyond our understanding, even that itself manifests a constant vibration of such an infinite degree of intensity and rapid motion that it may be considered at rest. I mean, this is what I hear. The all, which is everything, every frequency, vibration from everywhere around, is all vibrating. And that vibration is manifesting that which is around it to such a degree that it is solid. Do you guys have any questions on that?
It's a
I don't.
can of worms.
What was that?
It's a can of worms. You open up Pandora's box. This is pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't so much a question as it reminds me of Chimetics. I don't know if you've seen any of those videos where they'll take like a sound drum and put a membrane across and put sand on it, and then
Yeah.
it vibrates, and as the frequency goes higher, it creates a pattern, and the higher the frequency, the more complex it goes into chaos as you move, and then when you hit the next harmonic, it produces in the sand an even more complex pattern. And then if you do that with what do they call that? Like if you mix sand and water, well, some kind of liquid, like Einstein liquid, but it's not Einstein. Anyway, and you do that, it will create a standing wave form. So ever since I saw that, I think of all physical reality as just a standing wave form produced by a particular level of vibration in the energetic field. And it kind of makes you look at the whole world a little differently, you know?
Yes. I am so glad that you shared that, because I actually have a list of home fun assignments for each one of these, and I wasn't able to find the perfect video in time to share it. I wanted to share that exact example for to do. So it's so perfect that it's so evident everywhere.
In today's video that you recommended, there was some of that was revealed in there, Carol. So as you go back, they had quick clips of a whole lot of things of that nature.
Cool.
And yeah, it is really, when you think about it. And who's the gentleman from Japan with the water?
Emoto.
Gosh, well, it's kind of the same thing, only in a different expression,
Mm-hmm.
And so it does, yeah, and it makes you wonder, as we are receptacles of our senses and vibrations, how are those discordants? How do they affect us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? you know, when they're in balance and in disharmony as well. You know, it's something to be said about trying to change a disharmonious environment or just leave it, you know, get away from it. Or to be a part of it, you know, like with group meditations and chanting and things of that nature. So yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. And then you got to wonder about the new frequency that they're utilizing for cell phone usage that's coming up and growing. There's a lot of concern about that.
Yeah.
Again, that's all frequencies and vibrations, right? I may have shared this, I'm not sure, but with my children, we used to do a lot of caving for a number of years. And one of the things we always enjoyed was to going below ground, where all these frequencies and vibrations that are man-made and non are going on all the time. Underneath the earth, they're deadened. You know, you don't have any of that. And we would stay down there and meditate for hours, and sometimes stay for days, and come out different. You know, just like cleanse. Yeah, vibrations. So my question, Diane, is how can we protect ourselves from inharmonious, if you will, vibrations that are coming in, either man-made or from others? You know, what's a sound way, if you will, to protect ourselves, to create up our own field, if you will, to kind of keep those out and just allow what you want in? Is that down the road that we're going to be discussing that, or?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that's something we all definitely struggle with. I mean, to a certain point, I mean, we are a product of our environment and definitely affected by our environment. When I moved from Michigan to Costa Rica, it's such a huge just shift in energy, just because every aspect of life is different. You know, there's just more wildlife, and the air is cleaner, and everything's more natural. And I literally could feel changes in my body and felt myself becoming more clear as longer as I stayed here. And then as I started flying back, I could literally feel myself like becoming heavy and dragging again. So to answer your question, I think the most important thing is to look at our immediate surroundings and see what is sucking, I guess, what is making us feel dimmer, and alleviate that. So if it's like my house right now, it's surrounded by brick walls, okay, which is great because it's very protective. And then the ground is all rock. So it literally feels like a prison yard of that dead energy. And so I struggle, you know, do I move? I have the perfect patient. So I start planning, literally just bringing a whole bunch of pots surrounding my porch, you know, like my sitting area with plants, completely changed the whole energy of the environment in which I was sitting and spending, you know, my time. And so just making simple changes, I think are huge. Another thing is when I notice a lot of times I feel pressured to agree to things that I feel uncomfortable with, because the reason I'm uncomfortable with something doesn't make sense to me. And I just don't want to have to argue and explain it. And so I just go along. That really, really, really dims my energy more than anything else. So I think if we just kind of get in touch with ourselves and start taking, you know, an hour in the morning and just being gut driven and walking in circles and doing whatever feels the best to yourself, like honoring yourself, I think is really the best way to protect yourself from basically there's all these energies. I feel like all, if you look at each human as like a little light bouncing around, and they all have these different colors. And right now, a lot of them feel like they're red or black or really dense, right? And so they're bouncing into you, and they're literally leaving the mark on you. And so it's kind of like taking time to say, whew, washing all that off, and then saying, what can I do so that I'm not so flip-floppy in this environment? Because I can tell that this is a critical moment in time, and I want to put my energy into the light and align it with all that's good, so that when I am radiating into others, when I bounce into them, I'm bouncing light. That's kind of like, that's my answer. I don't know if that answers your question.
I noticed in today's reading, the lesson that, where am I? A little farther down, where it talks about, you're going to read it soon, about the different states, mental states produce different vibrations. And it's just been pressed on me over the last few years that my job, some people are just amazing teachers and some people are amazing builders. My job is to be a frequency holder and to find that frequency of peace, which when I read the bit about the infinite degrees of intensity and rapid motion of the all that's manifested by the all, that it's practically considered as at rest, finding, moving into awareness of that infinite vibration that is experienced as being at rest is part of what I know I'm supposed to be doing, and what I am doing. And I find that the things that I use to bring me more into alignment and awareness of that, the less I have to do from the outside to prevent or protect from. So what ends up arising within is what becomes the protective component for without. And lately, the things that have been especially helpful for bringing that up within, one is grounding. I've been walking outside in bare feet as often as I can. It just helps me get back centered and conscious and aware. Plus, all sorts of things happen when you do that. The electrons that just get zoomed up into your body and so on. Another is the using the techniques from the Institute of Heart Math for that heart-centered breathing, and that helps me move into that space so that I'm producing an electromagnetic field that is coherent, and it kind of, other people can overflow into my field, but I can overflow into their field, and that helps sort of cancel out some of those negative waves. And then the other thing is, lately, balanced view, the teachings of balanced view have just been coming up in my mind a lot. Just moving into that brief moments of awareness of that open intelligence, that field of open intelligence, and just resting there. And so when I read that about, that is almost at rest, the super high frequency is almost like it really correlated with that for me.
Thank you, Carol. One of the things I like to do to bring myself to, I guess, the now is to just focus on all 5 of my senses and take a moment for each one. It's something that really helps me get centered, which I can literally do, in the supermarket or, wherever, driving the car, all these things that make me a little nervous. So thank you for that reminder. Are you doing the tapping Zoom still on Sunday night?
Oh, I only did 3 sessions of 3 different techniques for dealing with anxiety. But if I have interest in doing a session on tapping, I'm happy to do it, free of charge. And I love that technique and talking about it. So if you ever want to do that, just let me know.
Awesome, thank you. I definitely will do that. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and continue with the material. They teach that all manifestations of thought, emotion, reason, will, or desire, or any mental state or condition are accomplished by vibration, a portion of which are thrown off and which tend to affect the minds of others persons by induction. That's kind of what we were talking about, where the people were where people, bump into each other and affect each other's vibration. Every thought, emotional state has its corresponding rate and mode of vibration. One of the things that they went into on vibration, which was quite lengthy, and I didn't have it in here, which I found quite interesting, is they talk about, if you talk about vibration levels and talk about material, and you basically, when they change the sounds on the guitar, you see all the different waves, same thing with color. And then when you take materials, it's interesting. I like to look at all the different seeds that all the plants around here drop. There's like infinite different kind of materials. And yet, as they change in vibration, they all break down into the same, however many elements there are, so it kind of, it really goes into how each vibration goes around the plane and then comes back to itself. And so it's constantly a circular motion. And then when you go into how all the vibrations, it isn't just the materials, but it's also the thoughts and the emotions. And I feel like those vibrations is what is attracting that upon ourselves. And so the tools are to notice our vibrations and play with them so that we can find ones that we find personally most pleasing, and then create from there as much as we want. And so that is basically what they call creating vibrations at will. And that's something scientists do, as they create materials, they create vibrations at will. And we can do that using exercises and tools and practicing with our minds. And that really is the science behind mental transmutation, which is what we went over first week on the principle of mentalism. And the last quote, which I just absolutely love, is from one of the old Hermetic writers. He who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power. And so that's what I had for this lesson on vibration. Do you guys have anything you want to, any other questions or anything you want to share?
One of the things that I thought of earlier too that I didn't mention when we were talking about, ways to keep the other people's stuff from overflowing into us, or the other frequencies. I had a professor in grad school who I asked one time, because she was talking, I can't remember the class, but she was going through a lot of case studies of her own clients and some of the challenges. And I asked her, I said, I've read that energy is sticky, and that at the end of the day, when you've seen 6 or 7 clients who have really been struggling and have a lot of, they've shared a lot of really negative stuff with you, you leave that behind. And she said, well, every day, at the end of the day, I will say, whatever energy is stuck to me from the people that I've seen and worked with today, I release it, I allow it to return to where it belongs, and I disengage from it. And any of my energy that may have been scattered and got stuck, I call it to return to where it belongs. And she would just take a deep breath and let it go. And she said the difference that she experienced when she did that versus when she forget to do that was quite noticeable. And then the other thing, this is triggering a lot of thoughts to me today.
That's great.
You know, that producing at will made me think of the Abraham Hicks process of calibration, and that, you know, I can't remember who came up with, they did like energy testing to come up with the vibrational frequency of anger versus frustration versus irritation versus, you know, as moving all the way up to peace, right? And just using that process of calibration, well, you know, I can't go from anger to joy in one step, but I can go from anger to, well, I'm really angry at this person. Um, Although I don't have to sit here and stew in my anger, I can allow myself to just experience the frustration of them being this way. Of course, I can move on in my day, and instead of being frustrated, I can choose to focus on what I have to get done, and start to feel a little excited that I've got things that will distract me. And then you work your way up a step at a time. And you know, it's nice to take the quantum leap from frustration to joy, but you know, we can work our way up those frequencies a little at a time too.
Yeah, I noticed that there's few times in my life where I have been completely stuck, and someone will just say something and snap me right out of it, or at least not snap me out of it, but let me see that there's another option over there that I didn't even realize. And it's interesting because both of them kind of said the same thing. When I was little, I was like basically in a circle. There's a circle of boys throwing snowballs at me, and I was kind of like in the center. And I was literally like just laying like this. And this girl on the outside, I was probably in 3rd grade, and I think she was a 6th grader. And she goes to her friend, just laughs, and she goes, "Why doesn't she just get up?" And I was like, oh my goodness. And I literally got up and left, you know, or ran away. But for real, I was just huddled like this. And she just laughed like that. And it reminded me of that. And then a worse time was when I was really struggling with the loss of my brother. And I just couldn't, I was just fighting with everybody. And this dear friend of mine called me, and she said something that struck me. And she's like, you're mad because they can't help you. And she says, only you can stand yourself back into your joy. And I was like, oh, it's totally true. And so I think that if we open ourselves to hear the angels around us, and we take the time to put ourselves, giving ourselves a moment just to let it all go. I like to just focus on making it to sunset. Do I have everything I need to make it to sunset? Almost every day I can say yes. Wow. And so for me, that's my great stress reliever. Because then I'm good. Maybe to sunset and the next morning's breakfast is even better. But so my plan was actually to share different ideas of, I guess, uplifting our vibrations. So we kind of covered that. Did you have any that you like to do, Marty?
Actually, I'm kind of really focused into the teachings of the Kabbalion and the Hermetic principles, you know. And so I'm trying, and I guess what I'm hearing is that's what we're doing, is we're applying those principles in daily life. See all that?
Yes.
All that? That's about half of it. I'm in an intellectual mode, and I'm just sharing that, okay? And I've been into this for many years, and I do understand through meditation. I do understand the grave importance of us, you know, finding center, finding balance, and then opening up. Right? That's pretty much how we receive from our higher selves, right? And kind of like as you were speaking, I was thinking of a tuning fork, you know, and how there's different frequencies for different tuning forks, you know, and or like the guitar, or Carol, as you were mentioning earlier, the vibrations that were doing sand changes, you know, vibratory sand changes, and holding those patterns. That's pretty darn cool stuff. So, so I'm kind of trying to figure this out. Are we? What direction are we going into these discussions? Is this the mode we're in?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
What
when I heard that we were talking about hermetics and talking about the principles of hermetics, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So and today we're on the vibration, talking about the vibrations. Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to get an understanding of what these classes represent. Okay, where we're going with them.
What I see is these principles are governing laws in which I see the universe working. I already believe them. Because of that, I use those. Not only do I know them intellectually, I institutionalize them into my being so that when I live by them, I walk through the world radiating these tools on a good day. Right. My love is to learn more of the intellectual part so that I can take that and then apply it. I think it's fun to come up with fun activities to actually see the principles in life. So when I go for a walk in the woods, I'll go with intention, with open eyes to maybe see all the different vibrations of matter being manifested. And so that way I can just kind of like, it brings me great joy to radiate in seeing these principles in life. And then not only in the material, but also in the emotional and the mental.
Okay. So when you shared about the classroom, that's probably more of the detailed sort of things that is for us to you would prefer to have us like study that, of course, and then if we have questions about that in our daily meetings, bring up those questions, and anything that might be involved. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the same materials. It's just if you go in the classrooms, then you can literally just click on vibration and you can see all the vibration materials. But it's all the stuff that I email to you.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
It's kind of just organizational file system, but you can do assignments and and everything else.
Okay, good.
So this is striking me as kind of an introductory, interactive application type of class, applying these principles. So we're not going into a lot of depth and history and philosophy regarding each one of those principles. We're looking at them and looking at ways to apply them. Is that correct, Diane? So I mean,
Yeah.
that's the impression. We're going to use them, learn them more deeply by utilizing, not primarily by studying.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. If you read just one of these sentences, it's so packed full of ideas that you can literally break down each one of those ideas into just one day and spend your whole day looking for evidence of just that in your life. You know, it's so complex, I think. But yes,
it's very, very basic. You know, vibratory, for goodness sakes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the explanation. I was trying to just kind of wrap my head around where we're going with the information, and so thank you for your answers. I appreciate.
Yeah, so basically each week I plan on just going through the Kabbalion is my main source, and then reviewing. I kind of take out sections that really hit me, and then reviewing those sections, and then seeing different tools to make realizing those in the world.
Okay,
That makes sense.
thank you. Oh yeah, perfect.
Well, and Diane, thank you. It was helpful to me that you shared, the way you will go for a walk and look at things, and just the different ways that you utilize, not utilize, the different ways that you try and receive the reality and the functionality of the principles. I can tend to be very, I want to read this, let's write a paper about it, let's say, and so lately, the last several years, in fact, I've been trying to do more embodiment type of learning. Well, and the School of Ministry helped me with that. Our final projects, my first reaction was, oh, I'll do a paper. Well, I didn't do any papers, and that was so helpful. And that's good for me to approach this from an embodiment kind of, so that I'm doing it on every one of those levels, not primarily or just here, which is my go-to thing.
Yeah, it's kind of to get these things out of here and get them to go like all the way through, so that when you're walking, you're connected and you're like, I mean, ideally, I would love to just have a whole entire tribe of people that like live as the Hermetic Society did back then. I think that would be amazing. So
I can relate to that.
yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I try to think, well, how would they handle this situation? You know what I mean?
Sure.
If this is your 100% belief system that you knew from a baby, how would I walk in the world if I will actually believe that in every cell of my being?
Yeah.
I think it's a more victorious place to come from.
And you mentioned that we find these principles in all traditions. And if each of our religious traditions was truly focusing on these principles that are present, I mean, when I read this, I mean, when I look at these principles, I find them throughout the Christian teachings, but they're not what end up being focused on. We end up focusing on traditions, or we end up focusing on rule keeping or judging, and not, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are of good report, think on these things. Don't give a thought for tomorrow. We don't focus on those.
Well, we're going to though, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a meditation unless you guys have anything else for today. And then I can just go into the closing. So go ahead and get comfortable. And take some deep breaths. And just imagine or draw your attention to the center of your forehead. And just feel the space filling with a white light. And just let it all float in there. And then as you take a deep breath in, let the light go above you as far as your mind can travel, and just illuminate yourself in a little shower as it comes down. Take a deep breath and pull that energy from your forehead down behind your navel cavity, down into your throat. And then just take a deep breath and allow it to fill up with light. And just know your truth. You know your truth. You speak your truth. And allow it to fill all the way down into your heart. And just know you love the truth. And then you fill all the way down to your will. Let your will walk in the light of truth. And let it fill all the way down into your belly button core area. And just know that you're always creating your truth light. You pull it all the way down to just below your chair or your bottom. Know that you're all connected to the ground, connected to light. You just allow that light to flow around into a little connectedness with the rain that was coming down and illuminate your whole area. And I just like to call this my happy space. And know you're always guided, always supported, always connected. The light of all surrounds us, the love of all enfolds us, and the power of all watches over us. Wherever we are, all is, and that's the truth. Thank you, guys.